各位现场、线上的来宾们，大家早安！我是今天论坛的
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ivy. I am your MC today. Welcome to the International Design Forum at the 2023 Taiwan Design Week. This forum is hosted by the Industrial Development Administration, MOEA, and executed by the Taiwan Design Research Institute. The event aims to broaden horizons, remove boundaries, and establish platforms. The event will be taking place from December 1st to 10th at the Songshan Cultural and Creative Park. This year's theme, Elastic Bridging, focuses on sustainable development and smart innovation. The events will include thematic exhibitions, exchange forums, and design nights. There will be 54 diverse Taiwanese teams in addition to 5 international teams who will be presenting their latest creations. The forum will cover a wide range of topics, including sustainable development, smart innovation, AI technology, human-machine interaction, design policies, and urban design indicators. As the first forum of the 2023 Taiwan Design Week, we are focusing on the relationship between sustainable development and urban areas. By utilizing innovative strategies and deepening design thinking, we will explore how we can create a more sustainable and livable future for our cities. In the design of socially and ecologically friendly cities, the practices often center around sustainability and human-centric approaches. But are these enough to encompass all the aspects? This session will examine the role of cultural institutions as experimental grounds for new practices, innovative thoughts, and socio-economic relationships, aiding cities in transitioning from sustainability to regeneration. This forum will be chaired by Chang, President of the Taiwan Design Research Institute, and we have gathered a panel of esteemed international speakers, including Dr. Thomas Harvey, President of the World Design Organization, WDO, Aric Chen, General and Artistic Director of Nieuwe Institute, HNI, and Srinivasan, Operations Chief of the Shanghai Innovation and Creative Design Research Institute. And then WDO Senator will also join the conversation, later inspiring the audience to think and explore the impact of design from various perspectives. Now let's welcome Secretary General Lin Deshen of the Industrial Development Administration, MOEA, to deliver his opening remarks. Let us put our hands together and give Secretary General Lin a very warm welcome. WDO President Professor Dr. Garvey, WDO Senator Kusuma, as well as Professor Srinivasan of Industrial Design, and Chief Operations Officer of Design Innovation Institute in Shanghai. Also a warm welcome to Mr. Aric Chen, coming all the way from the Netherlands. Dear participants, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am delighted to attend the very first International Design Forum among the many that will be held during the 2023 Taiwan Design Week. We look forward to a comprehensive series of forums that will be happening this week. I would like to first offer my most sincere congratulations to the Taiwan Design Research Institute for winning the bid for hosting the 2025 IASDR conference in Taiwan. And we are gathered here celebrating the Taiwan Design Week, leading the way as a warm-up activity to this global event. And we know that this event will offer a fantastic platform for broadening our international engagement through the lens of design. We will have the opportunity to interact and work with designers around the world. This reminds me of the Taipei World Design Capital and competitions that took place in Taipei about a decade ago. I was personally involved in the organization and preparation of that event. It was a grand event, and we cannot wait to embrace another international event in 2025. So over the next several years, we will be working very hard in preparation for the IASDR conference in Taiwan in 2025. I remember that when preparing for the Taiwan Design Capital activities almost a decade ago, we all worked very tirelessly, ensuring that the event would be a fruitful and engaging experience for all. For this week, we will have the design night, which took place last night, and there will also be a comprehensive series of forums. And today's forum marks the very first one, the development of sustainability in urban strategy. Over the years, we have noticed that the topic of sustainability has gained much traction and momentum in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan also set its goal and has also begun its journey toward net zero transformation by 2050. In order to achieve that specific goal, Taiwan has announced a roadmap for net zero emissions and 12 key strategies for Taiwan to achieve net zero transition by 2050. So these strategies encompass various aspects, including energy, industry, lifestyle, and society. We need to comprehensively drive the net zero transformation. Therefore, it is essential to start from the design of every aspect of life. We all reside in cities, and each and every our behavior impacts the outcome of our net zero transition. Therefore, design thinking and sustainable design approaches are of paramount importance for sustainable city development. At today's forum, we are very honored to have invited heavyweights and movers and shakers of the industry to join us today. We will engage in brainstorming sessions. We will be bouncing ideas of one another, share experiences and insights. Together, we will work hand in hand towards a more sustainable and livable future. In the end, I would like to wish that the Taiwan Design Week every success, and I wish all of you a fruitful participation in the events during this week. Thank you. Now, we would like to welcome Chang, President of Taiwan Design Research Institute, onto the stage to say a few words. Please welcome Mr. Chang. Good morning, Secretary General Lane from the Industrial Development Administration of the Ministry of Economic Affairs, distinguished international speakers, dear guests of honor. Since our upgrade in 2020, the Taiwan Design Research Institute has consistently leveraged design for innovation and transformation, using creative approaches to solve complex problems. We're not just driving innovation here in Taiwan. We are working across different disciplines and sectors in order to enhance Taiwan's competitiveness in the international arena, despite the challenges posed by the global pandemic in recent years. Our institute has continued to work with both domestic and international partners. So here we have embraced continuous changes and challenges, innovation, and this week and its series of forums are a testament to our achievements over the years. And I'm very grateful that today we're graced by the presence of so many distinguished speakers. According to the United Nations' latest global urban population data, by 2050, up to 2/3 of the world's population, which is about 5 billion people, will live in cities. In Taiwan, it is projected that nearly 90% of the Taiwanese population will live in urban areas in the future. Faced with the future of rising population, urban populations, we must consider how to respond and how to use sustainable methods and planning and design thinking to formulate future urban development policies. So this is a pivotal moment where we have the opportunity to think collectively and share ideas to promote a more sustainable and livable urban future. So we need to collectively come up with solutions that would benefit all stratum of the society. And we also understand that sustainable development and urban strategies are two sides of the same coins. Cities lie at the core of our lives, and their sustainable development directly affects our quality of life. Through this forum, we hope to gather a wide range of ideas and propose concrete and feasible strategies to ensure that urban development not only meets current needs, but also leaves a better environment for future generations. So once again, welcome to today's forum, and I wish you a fruitful participation in today's event. Now we would like to ask our distinguished guests to go on stage for good photo shooting. Now, can we welcome, please, Secretary General Lane and all our speakers go on stage for good photo shooting.
President of WDO, Mr. Aric Chen, the General Artist Director of the Nieuwe Institute, Mr. Srinivasan, the COO of the DIIS, yes. And last but not the least, Mr. David Kusuma, the Senator of WDO. Welcome. 同时要邀请的还有台湾设计研究院的林新宝。
And we would like to invite the Vice President of Taiwan Design Research Institute, the Chief of our Research and Development Department of TDRI. Please come forward.
好，我们请看前方。Please look at the photographer in front of you. Okay, please be seated. Oh, one more picture. Oh, they have a special design logo. Okay, design for a better future. 一个 D。好，现场的贵宾们，他们要用手势比出一个 D， 就是大家一起设计出一个更美好的未来。 好，我们看摄影师 on 3, 1, 2, 3。谢谢 ，Thank you, Thank you. Please be seated again. 现在我们请摄影师到舞台上来。
Our photographer will come up onto the stage so that he can capture a photo of everyone here, including the audience and the speakers.
Wonderful photo with all the audience today. So look at the photographer on the stage. 好，我们数3、1、2、3。那是不是大家也一起比那个 D 的姿势，就一个 D 一个手？
Let's do the D symbol for Design Week. One more picture. Thank you. That's Design for a Better World.
所以接下来事不宜迟，我们马上。
Without further ado, we'll proceed with session 1 of today's presentation. And our speaker is the president of the World Design Organization, Thomas Garvey. And his topic is WDO solutions-based strategies for sustainable urban development. Let's welcome President Thomas Garvey of WDO.
Good morning. Secretary General, WDO Senators, TDRI colleagues, organizers, and all of our friends and colleagues in design around the world. What a pleasure to be here to celebrate the inaugural Taiwan Design Week. It's interesting, all of these forums are really going to be quite exciting. This is the first one. This is the beginning. We're starting today on a very important topic, sustainability of urban planning. And it's my pleasure to present some of the work we're doing at WDO. So you may know that WDO is the global body for design. Now today we're looking at design in a broader sense. We're involving architects and planners and all kinds of other issues that are related to design. But we are an international, non-governmental organization that promotes the profession and its ability to generate better products, services, systems, and experiences hopefully for a better society for all of us. We're a global community. We promote a spirit of open collaboration across multiple disciplines and continents. We connect to approximately 400,000 designers around the world. We have 220 plus members. The members represent other designers from 40 countries, and we have 5 pillars of membership. They are professional members, promotional members, educational members, corporate, and now, through the World Design Capital Program, municipalities. We're very passionate about positioning design as an agent for change, and we strive to ensure that design is both effective but also ethical to address social, economic, and environmental challenges to create a better world for everyone. So programming is at the heart of our mission. You'll see here on the right-hand side, we have the World Design Assembly, the World Design Impact Prize, the World Design Corporate Circles. Today we're going to speak a little bit about the, I think this is, there we are, the World Design Capital Program and the World Design Pertopolis Program. So first, for the World Design Capital, and I was glad to hear the Secretary General mention Taipei from 2016. It was one of the most successful World Design Capitals we've had to date. Today, as Mr. Chang mentioned, we have half of our humanity, about 3.5 billion people today live in cities. And this number, of course, will continue to grow. So the World Design Capital Program is a biennial showcase, a 2-year showcase of design as a key variable influencing the quality of life in cities. We all know around the world we have mounting pressures of climate change, rapid urbanization, and cities around the world are all looking for new design strategies for development to best, of course, respond to the needs of their citizens. I was thinking coming here this morning, looking at all these events, how exciting it is to be part of this and these forums. But one of the most important things I think that we come out of this with is meeting each other. Everything we do is about people. Working here today is, of course, getting information and learning from each other, but it's also about networking and meeting new friends and people we can move forward with, to work together with. When you think of cities around the world, now this is some samples of population per square kilometer. So if you imagine standing here and moving 1 kilometer and another kilometer making a square, in Taipei, for example, you'll interact with almost 10,000 people. It's not as high as some of the other cities around the world, but in this part of the world, it's one of the top. You'll see Seoul has almost twice that. Shenzhen is very similar to Taipei. Tokyo, only about half of that density. And Shanghai, a little more than 1/3. So the World Design Capital Project is a social project in which design plays a key role, but it's also a design project that has social impact. These are the capitals to date, starting in 2008 with Torino, through to Seoul, Helsinki, Cape Town, and as was mentioned, Taipei in 2016. After that, we had Mexico City, Little Metropole in France, Valencia, and now I'm very pleased to have Mai with us from San Diego. San Diego will be our World Design Capital in 2024. It's the first binational capital, 2 cities working together, San Diego, Tijuana. So it's a whole new way of looking at our program, and we wish you great success, Mai, to you and all of your team. And announced for 2026 is the city of Frankfurt, Rheinland. So when you think of the features of the World Design Capital, we want to mobilize the design community first and foremost. It's also very important to expose government to design thinking. We create positive returns on investment for the city. One of the goals is to develop skills required for collaboration. We had a bit of a discussion this morning before this event talking about just how difficult collaboration is, but it's something we have to do. It's the essence to making things work. It's how we turn ideas into action by working together with other people. We also need to build new connections, and we want to foster citizen pride in the cities that are holding the program. People talk about return on investment, but there's also the idea of return on design. Of course, there's economic, environmental, social, cultural, and policy returns, but justifying the value of design is vital for the industry, and it's vital for all of our stakeholders. It's always necessary to demonstrate the value more than just the economic effects as a desirable output and impact of the program. From our last program in Valencia, for every euro spent by the public administration to finance the World Design Capital 2022, 5.8 euros of income were generated for the citizens of the Valencia region. That's a 6 times return on investment for the program. I have a small video here I'll show you. It's about 1.5 minutes. I'd like to mention something very exciting that came out of the World Design Capital Program. This program now has been in place since 2008, but a number of cities have reached out to us to try and do something different and a little bit more. So the first one, which we're now working with, is the city of Bengaluru in India, and we've developed a new program called the World Design Protopolis. There are 14 million residents today in Bengaluru, and that's expected to grow to 20.3 million by 2030. We're hoping through this program, with an investment of about $25 million US for design research and development, this will lead to approximately $0.5 to $1.5 billion in projects that are being implemented now by the city. This is a 6-year program. The World Design Capital Program runs, as you know, for a year and is offered every 2 years. Working with the city of Bengaluru, they've identified 6 thematic areas which they're going to work on over the next 6 years. The first one, of course, is sustainability. Water, waste, energy, environment, climate resilience. Then they want to build the infrastructure, build Bengaluru, infrastructure and the last mile mobility. But of course also the creative heritage, the creativity, the cultural, the traditional aspects of Bengaluru city, and the experience of being in the city. We're also looking at enterprising Bengaluru, which involves technology, startups, circular enterprises, safety and health for women, for children, for elderly, for people with disabilities, for everybody, for all citizens. And of course, then the future of Bengaluru, building change and building a method for moving forward with young people.
Imagine a city where design isn't just a word, it's a catalyst for transformation. The word protopolis is derived from the idea of prototyping a megapolis to emerge as more livable, sustainable, resilient, and equitable. Welcome to Bengaluru, the first World Design Protopolis designated by the World Design Organization. As a global hub of innovation where every corner breathes ingenuity, where new ideas emerge every minute, weaving a fabric of progress. Bengaluru is one of the world's largest incubators for groundbreaking research, a sanctuary of startups, incubators, and creativity that has changed the world. A place where innovation and intention find synergy by measuring the increase of civic well-being. A city that doesn't just talk about sustainability, it lives it, where ancient heritage embraces the future ways of living, blending tradition with innovation, where cultures merge, creating a unique tapestry of diversity. With institutions that shape the future, from IT giants to pioneering biotech, design, and commerce, Bengaluru is a place where design is a driver for positive change. The World Design Protopolis brings citizens and designers together to create solutions towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Join us at the epicenter of design evolution, and welcome to the Garden City.
People ask, how do you plan for a future you can't see? Right, it's a common question in education and development. How do we plan for a future we cannot see? Well, in fact, the future is already here. It's just not very well distributed. There are parts of technology you'll see in Asia. There's parts of development and material development you might see in the US. All around the world, there are pieces of a puzzle. Our job is to put that puzzle together. I want to show you this image. It's one of my favorites. Now, most of you in this room are too young to remember this, but there was a movie back in 1982 called Blade Runner. This top image was so futuristic, it was something nobody could even imagine. And if you look down here below, here we are in Taipei. These are some photographs I picked up last night. We, in fact, had a very, very good idea of how our future would look. So let's look to the future together. Let's build together. I'm very pleased to be here. The WDO is very proud to be working with TDRI on this forum and to be here as part of the inaugural Taiwan Design Week. So I look forward as well to hearing wonderful presentations this morning and for the next few days to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garvey. 谢谢掌声，谢谢，非常精彩的分享。我们今天的提问呢，会的时候在
Ladies and gentlemen, may I remind you that we will be taking questions at the end of today's program after all the three presenters have made their presentations. So please hold your questions. We will be taking questions in a few minutes. Next, we would like to welcome Mr. Aric Chen. He will be presenting today's second presentation, Beyond Sustainability and Human-Centered Approaches, Cultural Institutions, and the Regenerative City.
There's the game show background. Hello, everyone. My name is Aric Chen, and I'm the General and Artistic Director of the Nieuwe Instituut in Rotterdam. I'm born and raised in the US, but I lived in China and in Hong Kong for a while, but my family is from Taiwan, so it's very nice to be here, as always. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we could maybe think beyond some of these words that we hear so often, sustainability, sustainable, and human-centered, and specifically how we might, me being from a cultural institution and the cultural field, how we might see cultural institutions as testing grounds for bringing some of these things about. Tom mentioned the question of how do we imagine the future. I would argue that cultural institutions are a place where we can actually enact the future now. But first, I'll just give you one slide about the Nieuwe Instituut, because I'll come back to this later on. The one-liner is that we are the Netherlands National Museum and Institute for Architecture, Design, and Digital Culture in Rotterdam. We say museum and institute because we sort of fulfill both functions. On the museum side, we have a collection, we do exhibitions, education programs, public programs, et cetera, all the things that museums typically do. We also have, next to our main building, we manage and operate Haus Sonneveld, which is a really amazing 1930s example of Dutch functionalist domestic architecture. But then on the institute side, we fulfill a lot of other sort of functions. We have a very deeply embedded research and development team. We commissioned the Dutch Pavilion at the Venice Architecture Biennale. We work in a lot of policy areas from talent development to internationalization and so on and so forth. And it's a sort of dual role that allows us to, I think, maybe, it gives us more leeway to ask what further roles cultural institutions might play in confronting all these various challenges that we are always talking about. So, going back to these terms that I might want to kind of problematize today. In recent years, there's been a lot. I mean, I think you go to any sort of design and architecture event, and you'll see one of these two words, if not both, used quite a lot. And in many ways, these are very. It's hard to argue with these terms. The notion of human-centered design, of course, is about placing user needs, before, let's say, top-down mandates. Sustainable, you can't argue with that. But I'm going to sort of try to argue, as many are arguing these days, that in fact, human-centric approaches are part of the problem. They are part of what has gotten us into the current mess that we're in, and that sustainability is no longer enough, and that we need to be thinking beyond, a few steps beyond sustainability. But to give a little background, how did we get to this emphasis on human-centered? We often take things for granted. Things are the way they are now because they always have been, but that's not the case. For most of human history, generally speaking, we have seen ourselves as being part of nature, not in opposition to nature. There was not a man versus nature binary to the extent that we see it today. And to sort of oversimplify, we can draw a very strong narrative of how we got to this sort of idea that the world revolves around humans, with the Italian Renaissance. This image on the left, I think you've all seen, Leonardo's Vitruvian Man, inspired by an architect, of course, Vitruvius, the ancient Roman architect, who was very much talking about idealized proportions. And here Leonardo is equating idealized proportions of humans, always European men, European male humans, and idealized proportions in the broader sense. Man as a center of the universe, man as a representation of a perfect system of relationships. Now, through the centuries, the European Enlightenment, and so on and so forth, we get to the 20th century and the rise of modernism. These ideas have stuck with us. On the right is Le Corbusier's famous modular man, basically an update on the Vitruvian ideal. Now, in kind of placing man as at the center, of course, that then shifts and pushes everything else to the periphery, including all the flora and fauna that we share the planet with. This also has a history in European philosophical tradition. We can refer to René Descartes, the 17th century French philosopher from whom we get the Cartesian grid, but who also promulgated the notion of animals as being automata, meaning animals as being soulless, mechanistic beings that are devoid of lived experience, and whose mobility is largely defined in mechanistic terms. So this sort of the sort of denigration of the status of other forms of life really, you could say, begins here. And this then it gets expanded to not only animals, but also what Rosi Braidotti, this theorist who we work with sometimes refers to as dehumanized humans, right? So with European man at the center, we sort of devalue other forms of life, including other forms of human life, and we wind up with, the genocide of indigenous peoples as part of European colonialism, and so on and so forth, leading to a kind of total worldview expressed perhaps most drastically in the United States under the notion of manifest destiny, when in the 19th century, the idea of the conquest of the entire North American continent under American colonialism was seen as inevitable, right? You have this sort of allegory of civilization moving from the industrialized cities of the east coast of America, then kind of running roughshod across the continent with its railroads and wagons, over the existing inhabitants, whether they be the American buffalo, which was nearly wiped to extinction, or the native peoples who were also nearly wiped out. Now, of course, imperialism is not monopolized by the West. It's unfortunately a very human instinct. In some ways, you could say that it's just a matter of who does it better at what time. And in the past few centuries, Europe has done it best. But can we ask, can we decenter the human? Can we look at the world from the perspective of other forms of life? Acknowledging that we are all part of these networks of interrelated systems that are dependent on each other. So we know now, for example, that a forest is just not trees with animals and insects and so on and so forth, but that these are very complex systems, codependent on each other of microbes, fungi, plants, animals, insects, et cetera, that actually communicate with each other, that actually create very complex, even social systems in order to survive in the way that they do. This is a screen capture from an animation by the design studio Marshmallow Laser Feast, which I just saw a few weeks ago at the Museum of the Future in Dubai. We also know that animals are in many ways sentient beings. They feel emotions, they communicate with each other. Here is a project by Sputniko, the Japanese-British artist designer based in Tokyo from more than 10 years ago, where she actually worked with scientists at the University of Cambridge to develop a device to communicate with crows and then create a sort of speculative scenario in a music video out of that. The idea of collaborating with other forms of life is not new. This is, sorry, I don't have a date here, but this goes back more than 15 years. This is from the mid-2000s. I recall this very well. The Swedish design group Front created a whole series of projects called Design by Animals. This is one example where they had a roll of wallpaper that was then sort of chewed up by rats and then created these sort of new patterns. We've seen projects like, again, going way back, the honeycomb vase by Thomas Libertini, in which he worked, quote unquote, worked with bees to construct these vases, or Neri Oxman somewhat more recently, though still more than 10 years ago, and her silk pavilion using, where she brought robotics and silkworms together in order to sort of spin these pavilion-like structures. But these are examples of maybe working with animals, but in a way that are still, in a way in which we're still sort of using animals, right? They're still kind of there for our exploitation, resources to be extracted from. And this goes back to that same mentality of human centrism, where we are at the center and everything else is there for our exploitation. So the question now is, can we move from designing with or using other life to designing with and for other forms of life? And this is where we get into kind of the more than human-centric, more than human perspectives and going beyond sustainability towards regeneration. Sorry, I just said this. And to go from sustainable to regenerative is really acknowledging that sustainability, being sustainable, meaning minimizing harm, is no longer enough. We no longer have the luxury of being less bad. Sustainability, whether it's reducing carbon imprint, or one's carbon footprint, or recycling water, upcycling, all these things, it's about reducing harm. But the problem is, it keeps us on the same path that we're on, which is essentially the road to ruin. We all know that even if we cut all carbon emissions tomorrow, which is not going to happen, we're still going to see substantial temperature increases and all the sort of knock-on effects that will come with that. So can we move from aspiring to be less bad to, in fact, creating good, right? Can we move from our current condition of our current degenerative condition in which we're net negative in terms of our environmental impact, and aim not just towards being sustainable, which is net zero, but in fact regenerative, which is net positive, to begin to heal the planet and undo some of the damage that we've done, rather than simply continuing with more or less business as usual. So a few sort of concrete examples of how this might look. I'm sure many of you have seen a lot of these projects before, but you have designers like Marlene Huisseau, the French designer based in London, who has been designing habitats for insects. beautiful sculptural habitats for insects. You have Studio Obsidiana. This is actually a project I commissioned them to do in Shenzhen last year. They created these very sculptural forms that create a kind of seed garden for birds. The birds' waste then fertilizes the plants. The plants then support local insect populations. You have proposals like Terraform, the New York studio that is proposing, and I don't know the current status, but apparently they were really going to build this 8-story building in New York's Nolita district with a facade designed to support monarch butterflies, which are rapidly decreasing in population in the United States, to create a habitat within the facade of the building that supports monarch butterflies throughout their life cycles, with milkweed that the caterpillars feed on and pollinating plants that the adults feed on. There are sort of breeding sites and all sorts of other things kind of configured within this life-supporting vertical life-supporting facade system. A couple of years ago, Andres Jaque of the Office for Political Innovation and Miguel Mesa del Castillo in Spain completed their Rambla Climate House, which is designed not only to minimize its impact on the landscape, but to actually help regenerate its landscape in a very arid, kind of desiccated, environmentally degraded plot in Spain. The building, of course, well, it's lifted off the ground to minimize its impact on the land, and it has all these other features, but maybe what's most remarkable is that it acts as a kind of machine for regenerating the land underneath it. They dug out a ravine, which is a more ideal form of topography for retaining soil moisture in this very dry part of Spain. There are sensors that help monitor the water levels, and then the building uses collected rainwater from its roof and gray water from its showers and sinks to then water and nourish the soil underneath. The Pollinator Pathmaker by Alexandra Daisy Ginsberg. Basically, this is a program using AI that allows you to design gardens from the perspective of the plants and insects and others who will be using it. So you can kind of input your, input the location, so it has a sense of the climate, the soil types, et cetera, and then it generates how you should plant these gardens for the benefit of the life forms that will be on it to create a healthier ecosystem, not just for humans, but for all life. Last year, so I mentioned I commissioned Studio Obsidiana to do this sort of bird habitat in Shenzhen. That was part of the UABB Shenzhen biennial last year to this year, for which I was co-curator with Wang Zigong and Lu Wendong, working with the theme urban cosmologies. And this was a way, the sort of mandate from the government was to do a biennial on sustainability. But once again, we were arguing that sustainability is not enough. Technocratic approaches, techno-utopian solutions are not enough. Instead, we need to rethink cities as complex interwoven systems of cosmologies that we need to understand in order to get them to sort of work in more regenerative ways. So we commissioned, amongst other things, architects to kind of explore different cosmologies. So we had architects looking at waste cosmologies in Shenzhen, cosmologies of air, cosmologies of soil and microbes, cosmologies of traditional knowledges as well. And this sort of leads to, notions of, questions of, can we really share our planet with the other life forms that we need to share it with? Can we actually collaborate with them? And if so, how do we do that using the human frameworks that we're still used to here and now? This is a work by Cecile Bauman, which draws on a painting of the British Parliament. I think it's an 18th century painting, if I'm not mistaken, and speculates about a parliament of plants in which plants are given voices in our decision-making processes. Now, some of you are sort of smiling, laughing. This sounds really cute and funny, but these kinds of things are actually happening. You may have heard of this sort of rights of nature movement that is growing relatively quickly. Dozens of governments around the world, from towns to entire countries, and in different ways, have been building on the idea that, like human rights, other forms of life, nature also has intrinsic rights. Nature has a right to exist and to flourish, just like humans do. And in fact, our ability to flourish depends on the ability for nature to flourish, right? So these are not in opposition. There's not this man versus nature binary anymore, which we have been trained so well to think in terms of. So you have Ecuador guaranteeing the rights of nature in its constitution. You have Bangladesh giving legal rights to its rivers. You had a very interesting legal case in New York that was actually ultimately unsuccessful, but it really provoked a lot of discussion around granting personhood to an elephant at the Bronx Zoo. So these ideas might sound a little strange right now, but they are getting less and less strange. And I would actually argue, and I will argue in a second, that one role that cultural institutions can do is to make these strange futures real now, to begin the process of normalizing new and different and more positive and constructive worldviews. So as I was saying, what is the role of cultural institutions in this? Typically, what we do is exhibitions, discussions and debates, research and speculation, right? In general, we're pretty good at that. We know how to do a show, we know how to host a talk, we know how to kind of discuss ideas, debate ideas, we know how to pose questions, we know how to raise awareness. But I think it's really important for us as a sector now to ask ourselves, is that enough? You know, how many more questions do we need to pose? How much more awareness do we need to raise? All of that is still important, but we need to move beyond that. And part of that is acknowledging that the frameworks in which we think about design in the context of these social and ecological challenges also needs to shift. For the past 25 years that I've been in design, we've all talked. We all know well this notion of design as a problem-solving exercise. We've been selling design as a problem solver for decades now. And of course, design can solve problems, certainly on a micro level. We can make a chair more ergonomic, we can make a building more accessible. But when we're talking about these more complex social and ecological issues, we're talking about very complex networks of interrelated systems for which there is no quote-unquote solution. The recent history is littered with examples of solutions to problems that in fact made the problem worse or created brand new problems. There are always unintended consequences, knock-on effects. One person's solution is another person's problem. So if we really want to ameliorate some of these issues that we're dealing with, we need to stop thinking about solutions. Instead, we need to think about how to rethink systems and design as a system of negotiation and mediation. And so taking that back to the cultural, the role of cultural institutions, at the Nieuwe Instituut, we are discussing and working towards going from our kind of formula of exhibitions, debate, and research, posing questions, raising awareness, to enacting speculations or becoming societal testing grounds, meaning we don't just talk about ideas and proposals. There are no shortage of ideas in the world. We live in a great time in that sense where we have an embarrassment of riches in ideas. What we are missing is how do we enact these ideas, and cultural institutions can do that. Because we act as a kind of third space. Now, everyone is slightly different, everyone's model is different, but essentially and conceptually, we are not government per se, even though we maybe get funding from the government, and we are not the private sector per se either. We occupy a kind of third space, and that allows us to do things that policymakers / government and the private sector either can't, won't, or can't fast enough because they have other agendas, constraints, and stakeholders that they have to answer to. Our job as cultural institutions is not to make money, it's not to satisfy voters necessarily in the short term, but in fact, think longer term for broader societal and planetary benefits. So within what we do, we can be testing grounds. We can use ourselves as guinea pigs because we have the space, we have the audiences and publics, we can kind of create let's say, microcosms of real-world scenarios that allow us to try things out, see what works, see what doesn't, and share what we learn with others. And we can do this with a longer horizon. We can do things thinking a few steps ahead, maybe things that the world isn't ready for now, but we can, but by showing what could be possible and enacting it in real life, we can set these horizon lines to begin to work towards. So I'll give two quick examples of what we're doing as a testing ground, and one is called the ZOOP. Now this actually began as a proposal in one of our exhibitions in 2019, so it was a speculation, you put it in the gallery, you know, and we could have been done with that. But instead we decided to try it out ourselves. And what it is long story short, it is a framework for bringing non-human or more than human interests and voices into an organizational decision-making processes as a way of furthering ecologically regenerative practices on the organizational level. It's a way of safeguarding the interests of all life within an organization. It takes the interests of other than human life in our decision-making processes, and how that works is we have since spun the ZOOP into a nonprofit and independent foundation and institute to assist us with a new governance model that we've adopted. The new Zoonomic Institute appoints what's called a speaker for the living to our board of directors. So now on our board of directors, we have a representative for non-human life. The board of directors has helped us establish an internal working group that sets goals, agendas, and also is developing monitoring processes to see how we're doing in becoming a more regenerative institution. It's a model that's been designed to be adaptable to all kinds of organizations, nonprofit and for-profit, small to big, and theoretically an entire country could become a ZOOP, and it's a way, of course, and it's a way of sharing knowledge towards the development of regenerative economies. So we know this, I know this all sounds a little bit strange, and I just say this is one of the things I love about the Netherlands is that you can do these weird things and people you know, I always think about where else could you run a national museum and make an announcement that you're appointing a speaker for the living to represent non-human life on your board of directors, and the general response is, oh, that sounds interesting, let us know how it goes. And that's really one thing that's fantastic about the Netherlands. But I want to emphasize that on a broader level, you know, things always sound weird and strange until they become real. And once they're real, and if they kind of work, they become obvious in retrospect, right? This is how change happens. And this is one thing that we can do as cultural institutions, is to work that sort of zone between weird and obvious to help us get from the former to the latter. And yeah, that is us becoming officially the world's first ZOOP last year. Again, we said, let's not just talk about this, let's actually do it and try it out, make ourselves a ZOOP. And just last week, the Zoonomic Foundation welcomed 3 other organizations in the Netherlands into the ZOOP family. So now there are 4 ZOOPs in the world, and apparently 30 to 40 other organizations that are in the proto-ZOOP phase, meaning they are working towards establishing themselves as a ZOOP. So maybe this might not be as far-fetched and strange. In a few years, this may not seem as far-fetched and strange as it sounds now. Very quickly, just one last example, the news store. I think all of us who've been around the design world for a while, we've been to a lot of design weeks and graduation shows and biennials where we've seen a lot of young designers really questioning design's role in the world. Designers are asking themselves, do I really want to just design more stuff that's going, more stuff that is embedded in these these extractive exploitative systems that cause so much environmental degradation. So you see designers questioning the relationships between production and consumption through circularity, donut economics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They are examining non-capitalist or post-capitalist alternative forms of exchange. They are questioning how we define value and can we create other forms of value that are not dependent on extractive and exploitative practices. So we've seen these projects all over for years. And so we thought, you know, we have a great bookshop, but we don't have a museum shop. So why don't we create a new museum store, but instead of selling keychains and mugs and umbrellas, let's take some of these proposals that designers have been thinking about and make them our quote unquote products. So we just started a small pilot program, pilot launch of the new store at the Dutch Design Week last month, or sorry, now it's 2 months ago, in Eindhoven, where we tested out 3 of these different proposals. This is an ongoing project where we'll be learning by doing. So at every stage, we try these products out and then we sort of see what works, what doesn't. These different alternative systems are based on different logics, both capitalist and non-capitalist. Working with economists, we'll be sort of breaking down these various logics and seeing how we might maybe recombine them in different ways. And you'll be able to see, if you're in Milan in April, the next iteration, the 2.0 version of the new store. And then in June, during the IABR, the Rotterdam Architecture Biennale at the Nieuwe Instituut, you'll see version 3.0. And our aim is to have a permanent space in the museum for these strange forms of consumption that ask the question, is regenerative consumption possible, or is it really just the oxymoron that it is now? So thank you for your attention, and I will pass it on to the next speaker.
谢谢，我们再次掌声，谢谢我们的 Mr. Chang， 谢谢。非常精彩的分享，我们接下来要进行到今天最后一场的短。
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to the very last but not least presentation of today's forum. Srinivasan, Professor of Industrial Design and Chief Operations Officer of Design Innovation Institute, Shanghai.
Zhao 我感谢 TDRI 邀请我来台北。
Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here. I would like to thank the Taiwan Design Research Institute for inviting me. So I will now be switching back to English.
So good morning, everybody. So it's indeed my pleasure to be here after a few years, to be precise, January 2020, to be here in Taipei. And I would like to thank TDRI, especially my dear Chi, also Oliver Lin, for making this possible for me to be here with all of you. And also this gives me an opportunity to say hello to my numerous friends in Taiwan, as well as my dear colleagues, David Kusuma, as well as Thomas Garvey, who are my dear friends. So this year's topic itself is quite intriguing and also quite interesting. The term that has been chosen as elastic bridging is a term that is very typical use in biomaterials, biominerals, biopolymers. What they mean is they actually result in high tolerance as well as the ability to stretch themselves to doing things in a much improved and better way. So we are going to see, since the topic was given, so I'm going to see how that theme of elastic bridging is going to help the designers, because designers are very important in our society and we do different things at different points of time. And how does the elasticity helps us to being useful to the society in order to create a better world. So before we do that, I would like to, people always ask me, what are you doing in Shanghai? So you've been living in the Silicon Valley for so many years. What is it that brought you to Shanghai? So I thought it may be useful to just give 1 or 2 slides of what we do. So today I am part of the Design Innovation Institute in Shanghai, which actually is a platform, non-profit entity that provides a vehicle for companies to do some advanced research and innovation for the future. So this includes not your next product, how can I save 5 RMB on the product for the next 2 quarters, but it's looking like what will the washing machine look, 15 years from today. Would we need a refrigerator 15 years from today, or will there be a different product that will solve the problem of humanity? So that kind of research is what we do. We also bring to light few of the events through which our messages are going through. So one of them is called the Design Universe, which we do once in a year, where we bring speakers from all around the globe to talk about different topics that are more useful and sustainable. And then we also introduced a new award, which is quite unique last year in the form of Frontier Design Prize, where we recognize the contribution of a designer or a design educator for the work he or she has done throughout their life. And the next one is the most innovation product, which has created some impact. The first 2 has 1 million RMB, and the third one has 100,000 RMB as cash prize. We are into the second edition of this prize. The first edition, Don Norman was given for the best contributor. And the second edition, we just concluded last month. We gave it to Yrjö Sotama from Finland. So this is our, okay, I'm going to quickly go. Okay. Now, just give me 1 second. Transformation. So one of the things that we know the most talked about in the last 3 years is the word which is transformation, as well as the old term innovation. So what do we mean by transformation? And if you add these 2, then it becomes transformational innovation, which is what people are trying to find out. What is this new term that everybody is talking, and how is it going to help me? Those of us out here are designers. We are also the worried lot of the world today. Will we have a job tomorrow or aeroplane? And then came, fast forward, we got something new like an iPhone. iPhone is not really an innovation, but it's more of a transformation of the innovation that was done a long, long time ago. So that is the kind of things that we are going to be talking. And then we also need to find out how do we bring these transformation into our lives going forward, post-pandemic and whatnot. While doing this, one of the things while I was running the World Design Organization as its president 4 years ago, we wanted to bring these because that was a need of the hour. We wanted to bring the sense of urgency, and we also wanted to become more impactful. And it should be for the audience, which is the users. And of course, we form sustainability as one of our key objectives of the organization. Now, we are all talking about it, but we are talking much less. We need to talk much more than what we are already doing about the global challenges. What are these challenges? If you look at it, population growth. Thomas has mentioned, 10 billion by the year 2015. Aric also mentioned the growth of population, which is going to be one of the serious problems with us. Today, nobody wants to live in very few, I won't say nobody, few people want to live in the suburbs. Most of the people want to move to bigger cities because they can earn more money. They can become more better in their life is what the thinking is. So nobody is thinking about staying in rural area. So therefore, the population in the metropolitan cities increasing the problem of housing, transportation, and so many other things. Utilities are at stretch. Then we have this problem of consumption. Nobody wants to have small quantities. We used to have coffee maybe twice a day or tea twice a day, but now every street corner has a tea bar or a coffee bar. And we also learned through technology how to make milk, how to make the cows give more milk, or in case they don't give, we can know how to make artificial milk so that we can have that coffee with milk. So that is the kind of consumption that we are going towards. And then, of course, economic welfare. No normal person wants to have less in their lives in terms of economic welfare. Today, people are only talking about millions and billions, no longer in thousands, whatever be the currency. That's the kind of world we are living in. And then, of course, I want to talk about the impatience in a good sense. We, as human beings, are unhappy when your website is not taking more than 6 seconds. That's a good way of impatience. So that gives you progress to make sure that things that we want are going to be coming like this. But we also have the impatience in a bad sense. We don't have the patience to fix anything. In those good old days when I was like probably some of your age, we learned how to fix things. We take the screwdriver, open our little toaster or another machine, microwave. We find out what is wrong, what we can fix in a $1 component. Today we just have to throw the equipment, buy a new one, because we have no patience, nor the ability of the technicians to fix it in a reasonable time. Time is money. If it's going to take 2 hours, it means it's $100 worth. Do we really want to spend $100 to give this fixed? Why not we buy another one for $70? This is the kind of thinking that the human mind is going through. Of course, technology is there. Income inequalities are also there. That, people income inequalities also bring a lot of challenges in the form of crimes in the cities. People who do not have the means, they think, why am I not getting it? So therefore, I can take it by force. So there is a crime in many, many cities in the world. Every city almost in the world has some problem, especially the Western cities than in the Eastern cities. Of course, pandemic management is something, and climate change, Aric talked about it. So these are the bigger challenges that we have in the world, and they are not going to go away anytime soon. Of course, we all know, we all have suffered in one form or the other. What are all the bad things? In a race to infinity, the world was thinking that all of us were thinking, oh, we got it. We can manage everything that we wanted. But we were put in our tracks on a standstill with this pandemic 3 years ago. So we did not know, the humankind did not know how we could be stopped. If you're running at a 100-meter race in 9 seconds, suddenly you're put a stop. So that's what happened, and then pandemic told us how we can do. That's when the elasticity of human brain came into play. For jet setters, who were traveling for 25 days in a month, they have to sit at home. They have to see what else can I do. Same way, economic chaos. Nowhere, supply chain come to a standstill. Manufacturing was grinding halt. So these are our big problem, not to talk about the panic that has been coming out of the health issues of our near and dear ones. We couldn't see our parents. We couldn't go and visit our children. So those were some of the very bad effects. The reason I want to relive here is not because I want to relive those days, but also to remind us saying how human beings are capable of changing and being flexible in our approach. And the good things that happened, for everything there's always a yin and yang, so obviously we have good things. So we have new business models, especially the supply chain, not from the food delivery point of view. They all became very prosperous. They worked hard, but they also made a lot of good money. And more consumption. You're sitting at home, so obviously you have nothing else to do. Eat more or buy more. There's an urge to buy more things than what you needed because you have a lot of time at your hand. So that was one of the things for the business. There was more consumption. And then we were very adaptable. If we cannot go to a restaurant, that's okay. Order food, and then we'll have a nice dinner at home. So that was one of the things that we were able to adapt ourselves. And of course, resilience. We resisted like anything, trying to find the best solution, trying to find the best vaccine that can help us overcome this terrible disease. So that's what we ended up doing during the COVID. Now, data. Let's talk about data. In the past, designers had an idea that they would develop into a product or a service. But with the advent of huge data that is surrounding us all the time, what are we doing? So now, data is a better idea. Because as a designer, today you have the demography of the user, the gender, the income level, the geography where they live, the culture, the climate, all of these give you power to create a solution that is only targeting that particular person. We are strict vegetarians. When we go to the store and we buy only vegetables, the next week, the data guy knows that I'm only looking for the vegetable stuff. So I get a nice little message on my cell phone. Hey, Srini, today, these bananas are, like 29 cents, pound, as opposed to, if you buy today, you're going to pay 29 cents a pound. How do they know? Because data. So data is very powerful, and data has a better idea. Therefore, we can design better products and services. So that's what this tells you. And then shifting, and then today with the machine learning and analytics, we are able to figure out what you want. You may not know what you want, but I know what you want, because I have the power of machine learning and also the analytics that gives me the power saying, you must be wanting this. And if I tell you 10 times, you must be wanting this, you begin to see, maybe I need this, That's how the power of technology with data is doing that. And then shifting in business models. People have come with various business models that are surrounded by data that gives them advantage. And then new economy came after COVID. Everybody cannot go back, so they adapted to the same business models. And technology growth, we have seen the technology coming into our lives in a big way. Here again, if you look at it, we started doing totally new business models, new buy patterns. In the old, now we have started doing the need servicing. So we are basically seeing what else is needed, and then the business people have adopted to post-pandemic scenario where data is the key. Everywhere you go, data is the one that gives you more power as we go in our current lives. If I summarize all of these, you look at the data plus the technology of machine learning and other technologies associated with that. And of course, the designers, we are the guys who can make things happen with the technology and the amount of data that we know about the users. That becomes a much, much better user-centric solutions. And the user-centric solutions are, we now focus more on the users than we did in the past so many years ago. One of the things people always ask, what is his trend prediction? Why are you wearing a white shoe on a dark trouser? Why are you not wearing this? So these are the questions that all of us have no clue, no idea. Suddenly we go to the market, we go to the stores, they sell a different style of trousers or shirts or blouses or skirts. And we think like, wow, everybody's buying this, so I must get this. Because this is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry where designers, data scientists, and everybody come together to put the demand in your mind as to what the future could be. This also goes into the prediction of color. Like Pantone gives every year what is a color. Next year is going to be apricot orange. I don't know what is that, but people are saying this is the color. And everybody will rush to that. I see only 2 people are wearing close to the apricot. You guys must be trendsetters, one lady over there and another one out here. So that's what, we know. How do they come to this, right? They spend, like companies like Gartner, McKinsey, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars to find out what could be the trend. How do they do that? They go to different companies, CEOs, which are in the fashion industry and other industries, and talk to them and say, what are their plans, and put their thought in their mind, saying that this could be one of the colors, and the people accept those, and that is what becomes as a report at the end of the year or beginning of the year. So you get a report saying, these are the new trends. If you look at the trends in technology today, high availability of data, it's not a rocket science, everybody know. Applied AI. This is another big devil that is coming and influencing our lives. And then digital future, the super apps. WeChat app is a super app because you don't need anything else. It kind of encases multiple layers of applications within the WeChat. So that way, even if tomorrow, if you want to find somebody, if you want to do something, if you want to, a blanket citywide, you want to do a ban, these are the super apps that are coming. So now, like, the WhatsApp and others are following to see how can they get a super app. Maybe, in Taiwan, the Line could come up with a super app. This is a new trend that is happening. Of course, the mobility is a huge thing. Everybody is talking about different kinds of mobility. And Web3, even though it is a future trend, it has not succeeded. It's failed miserably because of, NFTs and things like that. In the advent of ChatGPT, the NFTs are not being successful. So that is one technology that did not happen. And then, of course, immersive reality. We all knew about immersive reality for a long time. But the use of those today is much prevalent than in the past. Of course, cloud is one thing where we no longer need to have storage in your piece. It can come there. Now, let's look at how elasticity was playing in the business strategy. I'm going to give you like 3 examples. Netflix and the Ticketmaster, they use the AI-led technologies to save 40% of their development time in assessing the user needs through repetitive tasks in terms of who they want, how to distribute, what's the logistics. So that 40% is really a huge saving. They're using the Google AI to get this kind of scenario. The most important thing is Swiss Air. Swiss Air, they had multiple databases, of the crew, of the pilots, of the logistics, of the ground staff. All of these, they combined into a massive, big database. And then they used Google AI to automate a lot of the processes. So therefore, in a given weekday, if the demand is much less, they can quickly switch over to a smaller plane and bring lesser crew. And that results in 30 to 40% of savings for the airline company. This is so huge because airlines typically run losses because they already have a route map and they have to fly. But if a A380 is going to be there with 465 passengers, now there is no demand, they could come with a smaller version. So this is something which is huge benefit to them. And again, they were very flexible quickly to adapt to this one. The next one is a Grupo Folha, a Brazilian newspaper chain. They wanted to celebrate the 100th year anniversary, but they were really having trouble to collect the archives of 100 years. So they used Google Vision AI, which is another tool of Google, and they came together to quickly put together within a matter of 2 weeks all of the 100 years history. This could be useful for WDO when we're trying to do the archives. We're trying to really work hard to get the archives from our Brighton University. Similarly, Twitter and Yuzu, they are gaming companies, they use. So the point here being, even in business strategy, they were quick to adopt whatever be the method. In this example, it was AI, but others are using other methodologies to go from there. So that brings us to the question, the billion-dollar question, what next? How are we going to continue living like human beings? Are we going to become robots? That's the question, right? If you look at it, what are the biggest questions? People always talk about this old normal. First of all, it's very tough to define what is normal. What is normal for you is not normal for me. But people, one question after the pandemic, supposedly the pandemic, we want to know what is the old normal. Are we going to ever go back to 2018, 2019 times when we did not have these kind of problems? Probably not. And then, since 2022 October, the ChatGPT has become a big problem in our life, also a big opportunity for a lot of us. And it's also a big question mark saying, as designers, am I going to be able to do my design work? How flexible, how elastic I should be to accept AI in my life? For my dear professors who are here, how am I going to teach whatever subject it is? How am I going to assess my students' work, whether they used AI or they did by themselves? Do we really need to teach to get them 120 credits to give them an undergrad degree? Or we can give credit to AI for some of that, or create a new branch saying this is a branch that, is aided by AI-aided degree or something like that. So we don't know. So these are some of the things that we are worried about in our AI versus human scenario. And of course, How much data are we going to be inundated? How much data is going to come on heads that we will become smaller? Because data is everywhere, and it's so annoying at times that anything you want today, you cannot get it before signing. If you want something, you sign up. Okay, what are the perils of signing up? When you sign up, that means they have your life in them. So you will get anything and everything from them for the rest of your life. And it's not easy to get out of that. The technology guys and the designers in hand try to create more problems. This is one of the things that designers are also doing to the harm of the others who are not designers. Of course, we're going to look at more pandemic. This morning I was reading the news. There's a new form called the M pneumonia, which is what people are starting to test around the globe. So we don't know if this is another pandemic or epidemic or whatever, but that's some other worries that we have. Of course, human mind is, as I said, very flexible, and they're very, very elastic in their approach to life. How elastic we should be? That's a question all of us should ask and adopt to ourselves. And the answer for us is, here is my thought: the best way to predict future is to create it. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Instead of worrying about what will happen, let's see what makes sense for us as human beings, as designers, as economists, as financial people, as technology people, as administrative people. How do we want to run our life is something that we need to determine. So I have a message here. Don't panic. We are designers. Thank you.
掌声，谢谢我们的营运长 Mr. Srinivasan.
Yes, we have listened to three presentations. They went pretty fast, and now we're going to have this panel discussion. So please give us a few minutes, and we are going to show you the QR code for Slido. Please scan the QR code and send your questions to the three speakers. And our moderator will also use a tablet to show these questions. And if you like the questions posed by others, you can like the question, and we will begin with the questions with the most numbers of likes. And our audience online, please, you can also join us by asking your questions via Slido. And our moderator will raise these questions to the speakers. Yes, we have prepared these chairs on the stage. So I'm going to invite the president of TDRI to moderate the session. And let's welcome the speakers to come forward.
Research Institute Zhang Ji院长 and Senator of WDO, Mr. David Kusuma, and President of WDO Thomas Garvey, Mr. Aric Chen, and also Mr. Srinivasan. Please.
好，非常感谢我们。
Thank you very much. Thank you to the three excellent presentations. I will first ask David Kusuma to give some of your comments before I ask questions. And I will also like to thank WDO for recognizing the Taiwan Design Week. We have three presidents of WDO here. Former President Srini, former President Thomas, and President Thomas, and former President Kusuma. And the Aric is the head curator of the Design Biennial in London. We're very happy to see Aric again. This is a great opportunity that we are here together. So that's
For three presenter. Yeah, thank you.
So, thank you very much, Chi, and greetings, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you to TDRI for the invitation to join this panel as well. I took a few notes because I thought the three presentations were actually very excellent, and they all tied together that I want to summarize as well at the end. You know, Thomas spoke about WDO programs. One of the things that he mentioned was the membership pillars. And the membership pillars is very important to WDO. It opened up a new avenue because we never before, until a few years ago, had a membership category for cities and municipalities. You know, so really when we talk about urban areas, it's critical that we get cities and authorities involved as well, because if we really want to fulfill our mission to design for a better world, we cannot do it by ourselves as designers. You know, so any city that actually has a design department is eligible to apply for membership in the World Design Organization. The other thing that Thomas mentioned was the World Design Capital Program. And the World Design Capital Program, you know, I must say that what makes me so excited about this program is that they have some key deliverables. You know, so when you talk about San Diego, Tijuana, they, you know, these are two sister cities on both sides of a controversial U.S.-Mexico border. So they focus on human migration, you know, and really when you think about human migration, there are only a few reasons why large amounts of population move. You know, they're either due to political persecutions, or natural disasters or economic strife. You know, the important thing here is that if we learn and we come up with solutions, you know, with this World Design Capital Project, all of these solutions are exportable. We can actually take them to other places in the world and actually apply some of those solutions to actually help other communities in different parts of the world. So, you know, I just wanted to point out that a lot of these projects, you know, are not just singularity projects. They actually have consequences beyond the cities that we are actually focused on. I want to mention a few things about Aric Chan's presentation. I thought it was very excellent. Thank you for your presentation. I like how you had mentioned that you wanted to go beyond the terms of human-centered and sustainable, that human-centered is part of the problem and sustainability is not enough. You know, I really like that argument. It's, you know, how do you go from being less bad to really being good? And I think that, you know, this comes back to the key argument that a lot of sustainability issues, you know, in the world, especially when you think about things like pollution, you think about climate change, you know, they're actually based on human behavior, you know, or I would say poor human behavior. You know, if you think about life cycle of products, for example, especially with regards to end of life, you can ask yourself questions like, why do we recycle only 9 to 12% of plastics and textiles when we can actually recycle much more than that? Because we give them such little bit of value. You know, so I think the big question is how can we change human behavior towards positive change? You know, and I think one of the examples I like to give normally is this, we follow what's known as a global footprint network. You know, and this is a network that focuses on the health of the world based on its ability to regenerate. You know, we consume resources from the world. We take out trees, we utilize water, but the earth has the ability to replenish what we take. But the global footprint network is already saying that we are behind the 8 ball. We're now having behaviors that cause us to be consuming resources faster than the earth can actually reproduce them. You know, and they're saying that if we don't change our behaviors, then by the year 2050, we will need 2.3 Earths to continue our current rate of resource depletion. So what it means is that if we don't change human behavior, we will run into great scarcity in the world. So that's something we really have to think about. But one of the things I also want to do is to mention that the World Design Organization, we have launched a new magazine called World Design. It's meant to talk about all of the most cutting-edge issues related to the field of design. And I would like to invite you, Aric, to make an article for the next issue. The next issue is actually based in April. And I think your whole focus on rethinking systems, your ZOOP model would be really a great argument in terms of how do we go beyond human-centered, and how do we go how do we push sustainability further, because it's not enough. For Srini, Srini talked about elastic bridging, and I think that Srini, you made a lot of really great points talking about your design prize, the frontier, and recognizing young design talent. Some of you know that the World Design Organization also has a Young Design Circle, and it's one of the missions that has been put top of priority with regards to mentoring, and also to utilize young talent to try to find solutions for the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is really important because a lot of young designers, they see things through a different lens. So really the type of solutions that they would come up with are totally different than the type of solutions that those of us who have been already in industry or in education for so many years would probably never think about some of the things that younger designers could think about. So, I think that that is very, very important. Srini also mentioned global challenges with rapid urbanization. He talked about technology and data. And some of the points I think are really critical. When you talk about design and AI, it's a very major topic in the field of design, and actually just about every field today. But when we really think about technology, I have to totally agree with Srini. We cannot be afraid of technology. It's going to keep coming, and it's going to come faster and faster, and it's going to come whether we're ready for it or not. So what it means is that as designers, we actually have a responsibility. We apply technology into products that make people's daily lives easier. And so the technologies that we look to apply, we should make sure that they maximize the human benefit. That's our responsibility. And we need to make sure that we stay true to that. I want to just give a couple of closing statements here on this subject. I came to Taipei just 2 days ago from Vienna. We had completed a special relationship with the UNIDO. So UNIDO is a United Nations organization that's actually closest to the field of industrial design. UNIDO stands for the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. And we signed an agreement with them. They have a mission very similar to the World Design Organization. We talk about design for a better world. They talk about raising standard of living through increasing the manufacturing and the industrial capability and capacity of different countries. So we're looking to engage with them on different projects. We've also worked with a number of other global organizations. We just signed an agreement earlier this year also with UCLG Africa, the United Cities and Local Governments of Africa, because Africa happens to be one of the continents where we have not enough representation from countries and members in Africa. And this UCLG Africa actually puts us in contact with almost 10,000 mayors from the major cities within Africa. So it's really significant for us to really spread the word in terms of how design can help some of these communities. I do want to point out that whenever we talk to authorities, whether it happens to be the world bodies and agencies of the United Nations, or whether we talk to city governments and mayors' offices, everyone always asks for the numbers. Their question is, how do we know that if we invest in design, we get a good return on investment? And here I want to point to the project that WDO and TDRI has been working on together, which is the World Design Index, really focused on how do you determine the true metrics to define the impact that design can have on human communities and urban areas. So this is an ongoing project. I think that any city who is interested, I know that TDRI and WDO are very interested to get them involved in this project. The important thing is, how do we convey the value of design? And a lot of it has to do with data. You heard Srini talk about data, but it also has to do with a design policy and design. It's another thing that is extremely important when we talk about our responsibility and how can we help different countries and different governments improve their record, in terms of sustainability, in terms of how we address problems in the world. If you look at most public policies, you will notice that most public policies actually are very competitive in nature. Different countries want their human capital to be better. They want their industrial base to be better. They want their technology to be better than their competitors or other countries and nations. What we're interested in is more in terms of what are the key things that go beyond national boundaries. Every country, every citizen has the responsibility and the capability to contribute to a better world. And again, it comes back to issues regarding behavior. So I want to just mention, Srini talked about elastic bridging. I'm not going to talk any more about that subject, but I do want to mention that design is a bridge, and we have to kind of keep that in mind. This is the enabler for us to make a better world, to raise the quality of life, because design connects creativity with practicality. It connects technology with art. It connects business with society. Right? And we have that ability that design can actually bring the best solutions to life, but it also can create a higher value for humanity, for human beings. So at the end, we all want to design for a better world, but not just in talking. We need to actually have a real call to action. So. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That's a great comment. And before we open question for the audience, actually there are 600 audience online. Yeah, because it's broadcasting. Yeah, so they can also on site. They can use Slido, which is a system there. They can ask questions online. So I will present the question after. So before open for the audience, I'd like to have few questions for each presenter. For Thomas, what is the role that WDO play in sustainable urban development, and what achievement is WDO thinking for the future? Yeah.
Thank you. I think first and foremost, when we think of sustainability and building our programs, we think of the World Design Capital and the World Design Protopolis program. It's all about sustainability. As far as the future, I would say our plan is to grow, to have more impact. I was thinking when David was speaking about numbers, in my presentation I said we are in contact with 400,000 designers around the world. When you think about it, when you join an organization, they have a certain number of individual members. We have member institutions, so when TDRI joins, the TDRI members are our members. When a university department joins, their members are our members. And when I think about this inclusion now of municipalities, I think we need to redo our numbers. Because now the city of Taipei, the city of San Diego, although we actually count the number of designers in the departments in the city working, we are actually, by having impact with the cities themselves, through our events and organizational things, we're actually in contact with so many more members of the city. So I think we need to rethink our numbers and think about the impact of growing. I also want to say something a little bit in relation to what Aric said. I was really inspired by your presentation. And you said, where else in the world than the Netherlands could you do such exciting and fun things, weird things? And I thought, you made me think of something really, really quite interesting about all of us as designers. So let me take you back a little bit. Many, many years ago in the 80s, I was working in New York City, and we were under contract with NASA Ames to design the first interiors for the International Space Station habitation module. We had our designs complete, we had the technologies complete. In the 1986, we had the technology to go to the moon, to mine lunar soil, to create fuel, to go to Mars and live on Mars. The technology was there in the 80s. Here we are, 2023, and we're not there yet. And so through all of our studies, we tried to understand, why do things that are possible not happen? And one of the reasons is that we first have to dream and create the idea. So I really appreciate when you said, well, if we want to think about the future, why not create it? Srini said the same thing. We need to create it. We're designers. The challenge is that not everybody is a designer. Everybody in society wants to contribute to their society. And some people do it through administration. Some people do it through math and physics. Some people do it through other things. Designers uniquely are the contributors who think about the future. Think about how easily we propose new ideas, accept criticism. Think of our educations. We're all so accustomed to having ideas, sharing ideas, and having them be debated, challenged, improved. So when we think of our society as a whole, though, and I think about this quite often when I think about our membership in the World Design Organization, as dreamers, we can imagine that future, but then it takes time to build that future. And even after we build it, it takes quite some time for our societies to accept them. We talked about AI, some of the new mobile technologies. There's so many technologies available to us today at the leading edge that a lot of people still don't know how to use, don't know how to feel about, don't know how to accept. So I think it's quite unique that when I think about your question, Aric, we live in a privileged world of people who can think about the future, who can imagine moving forward. But I think the key thing that we all have to remember is that not everybody is in the same mindset. And the only way we can move forward really optimistically is to make sure we move forward at a speed that everybody can join us at. So it's quite exciting to be in a room full of designers. It's quite exciting to be in a room full of people who think about the future. So as far as moving forward, Chi, to answer your question, I think we need to grow in our impact. We need to grow in the number of people we influence. But we always need to remember that we need to take everybody with us.
Thank you. And for Aric, what is the main concern with the terms sustainable and human-centered in the context of design city for social and ecological health? Yeah.
Thank you for that. And just maybe repeat a little bit what I said in my my talk. I think the main problem with human-centered, as I said, is that human-centrism is what has gotten us into the environmental mess that we're in the first place. This idea, this worldview that we are at the center of the universe and everything else exists for our exploitation, right? And that is the basis of the extractive systems and capital systems that we are so entrenched with, and that's why it's so difficult for us to move forward in being more sustainable or regenerative. These systems are too entrenched, and really they come from our human-centered worldview, which is actually quite young in the if you think of the span of a human history. In terms of sustainability, as I mentioned, I mean, sustainability is about doing less bad, but we've already done so much bad that we're already sort of spiraling into like a very, very a dark future. So if we want to avoid that, or at least ameliorate that, or make it less bad, we can't just be less bad now. We actually have to be good, right? We have to go from net negative impact not just to net zero, because net zero is just going to keep us on, maintain the same momentum towards the inhabitability of our planet and probably our extinction. Not to be over dramatic about it, but yes, that is where we're going. But towards net positive, right? Having a positive impact. But maybe I can, also add a little bit more about why problem solving is such a problem, right? As I said, of course, design can solve problems. We can make this chair more ergonomic. We can, this can be a better product, or et cetera, et cetera. But when we're talking about these bigger complex issues, as I mentioned, it's not that simple. And in some ways, by claiming to be able to solve some of these more complex problems, we are actually doing ourselves as a design world more harm. I've been around long enough to hear us selling this notion that design, the power of design, we're going to solve the world's problems. We can't, and we need to be more humble about it, because by insisting that we can, we are only discrediting ourselves and harming our ability to actually do good in the ways that we can do good. And that is through rethinking systems, negotiating, and balancing and rebalancing interests and needs, and as well as desires. There's been a recent flurry of articles proclaiming the death of design thinking. Now, you probably have all heard about design thinking. It's been a term that's been used a lot in recent decades. Now, of course, design thinking has been declared dead many, many times over the years. And this is not an argument about that, but the point is, I think, the point to draw from this is that there is a growing awareness, finally, that one of the premises upon which design thinking was based, that you can, as a designer, you can just sort of take a broad overview, parachute into a situation, do a little research, maybe a few interviews, come up with some clever solutions, and then you're done. Finally, we realize that it's not that simple, and the idea that the design world can still maintain this methodology is one that really needs to be revisited in a way that I would actually argue decenters the role of the designer in some ways. Not only do we need to decenter the human, we also need to decenter the designer, meaning the designer needs to work in collaboration with the other humans that we're designing for, with the other, with nature, with the ecological systems that we are trying to balance, and that requires a total shift in the way we see ourselves, and a pretty strong shift in the way we see the world. And that's not easy, and it's going to take some time. But I hope at least I could convey in my talk that this is, at least for me, why I believe in the role of cultural institutions, because we can add this sort of impetus, these testing grounds to bring. To make these things more realizable. And maybe I'll just make one final point, and that is that with problem solving tends to lead us towards, no matter how much we say about human psychology or user needs and et cetera, the notion of design as problem solving tends to steer us towards technical solutions, right? Highly rationalized, systematized methods and for coming out for coming up with these goals and solutions. This is why we tend to sort of focus on these kind of techno-utopian ideas. Like technology is going to save us all, and it's just a matter of designing a system to enact and then facilitate and use and then make use of that technology. It's not that simple either, you know. Change requires, again, shifts in mindsets, changes in the ways we relate to each other, changes in the way that we define ourselves in relationship to each other, shifts in worldviews, and that's culture. And so, you know, we have to kind of really be aware of that, because, you know, the people in charge, the people making the decisions tend to be bureaucrats and technocrats, and that's why you wind up with all these bureaucratic, technocratic solutions that don't work, because the missing ingredient is culture. Thank you.
Thank you. And for Srini, designer play an important role right now in our society. How do designers navigate challenges such as cultural difference and diverse perspectives to create universal, effective, and inclusive solutions?
Thank you, Chief. So I think one of the things that I've said, designers are empowered to change the world. Given the technology growth, the world is also becoming narrower and narrower. So no longer it's the cultural barriers are so difficult to overcome in today's world. Because of diversity in our work environment, we see more internalization. So we can definitely learn. So one thing I would like to urge the future, the world belongs to all the younger ones, and also more so the young designers who are going to change the world in many ways. By co-creating, taking a cue from Aric's point of view, designers do not have two horns. Okay? They're also normal human beings. So we need to understand that. Bring some humility in your approach. Technology is going to bombard you. Do not panic. Learn more, because knowledge is going to be more powerful. It enables you to create better solutions. Also, please do not solve for the symptoms of a problem that you were given. Because if you solve the symptoms of a problem, that's only a temporary fix. You need to do the root cause. Like we always say in our engineering sense, you have to do the root cause analysis to see how we can do that. And to that, use the technology, because today's world gives you a lot more tools. And do not be worried about this mid-journey. Tomorrow there'll be a short journey or a new journey. Technology will come and go and disappear before you realize. Before you learn, technology could have gone. But keep that in mind, that you need to really learn, so you as a human being can apply which is the best way to go and find the best solution for the root cause of the challenge that you've been given, while keeping in mind that you need to co-create, because you are not the only person. Designers have the disadvantage of not being part of the decision makers in terms of the upper management. They are not on the board of many large companies, but still they are the ones who get to decide. They could get to decide, and if they decide good, they are praised. If they decide bad, they are blamed. If a product failed, they say, oh, the designer made a mistake. But they will not say the marketing or the CEO made a mistake. So because of that kind of scenario, designers have to be much more elastic than the rest of the crowd. It's an unfortunate role. Don't blame it, because you chose to be a designer. Nobody told you to be a designer. You chose the profession of design because you loved it. So use that you are superior in many ways, and use the knowledge to create a better, wonderful, and humanity-centered solution. That's my thoughts on how designers can help create a better solution.
Thank you. Thank you, David, because for the last 4 terms, you appointed every board member has a portfolio. And we have developed a design index portfolio. And Dr. Liu leading a TDI research team doing that. And also we presented in Tokyo. And my question, what are you looking for in the future? Why design index is important for urban design, urban development? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chi. So for those of you who don't know how the WDO board works, typically speaking, we have projects that the board gets involved with, basically as an incubator for projects that have not yet become mainstream, projects that we feel are important for the future, but we haven't built the infrastructure, the system behind it. So, I want to back up as well. We are all fortunate, Thomas and I and Srini, to have worked together for many, many years. We actually have a continuation of what I would call a world design agenda. That was a strategic growth plan that was started under Srini's presidency. It was something that we expanded, during the time that I took over, and then something that Thomas is working to expand in this new term. But when we were looking over the last term at what are the key strategic initiatives that were the most important for not just WDO, but also for the design profession at large, data came to the top of the mind. We realized that design is a discipline that is actually very data poor. And there are different organizations, some of them are members of WDO around the world, that have started to collect data, but their data is localized. The question is, how can we get data that's more global, that gives us not only an indication of where the profession is heading in terms of basic data. When I say basic data, I'm talking about the number of students who actually graduate from a university, where do they end up going for their professional role? Do they go into industry? Do they go into education? Do they work for an NGO? That sort of thing. We don't even have that basic data, but then our focus turned into this whole aspect of how do we convey, how do we communicate the value of design? Because design is such an amorphous topic. You ask different people in terms of what design is, and you get all different answers. And actually the two answers that we hear the most out of people who are not connected to the design industry is that design is either decoration or design has to do with like high branded products like Louis Vuitton. To them that is design. But our role is to educate them and to teach them that design actually has a higher calling. Design has the ability to focus on not just products, not just services, experiences, all of those good things, but really we want to focus on design for social improvement. How can we actually focus on raising quality of life through the design process and through taking a look at what the benefactors will actually need and what they will want. So this is where this whole focus on urban areas and the World Design Index came up. In my opinion, it's one of the most important projects as we move forward. It's tied to a couple other projects that we were moving forward at the same time. So one is the World Design Index that actually takes the data that is collected through a data strategy. The important thing is how do you get the data and what kind of data do you actually want to collect? And then once you've collected the data, what do you do with it, all of the data? I mean, there are so many questions and so many layers to answer at the same time. And then, we want to be able to build, I had mentioned this during my summary, a tool so that, you can level of information back. And I think the beauty of this project is that now that other cities, both past world design capitals and ones that are coming on board in the near future, and even cities that are not even part of that world design capital network have asked to sign up to be part of that program. And I think that this is going to focus in terms of what are the metrics and again the data. The more data that we're able to collect, the better the prediction we can actually make with this tool in terms of what will be your payback, because it's not just about static metrics. It's about metrics that also has to do with, we talked about culture, we talked about tradition. Different parts of the world will have different measurements. So I think that from the standpoint of taking what comes out of the World Design Index and trying to apply it to some of the other programs like design policy, we're also looking at developing a design policy framework. These are all the pieces of the puzzle, I think, that can help boost the image and the visibility and the impact of design around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have some questions from online. So I will ask the question for our audience. The first question for Aric. When you mention about the right of nature, does that mean the designer need to work with the nature and also need to work with to explain more?
As I just said, the world is run by politicians and bureaucrats and technocrats, and rights of nature is a way of bringing what we have known as humans for most of our history, that we are dependent on on nature, and that we need to live with nature, not in domination of nature. That's a way of technocratizing these knowledges that we've known since the beginning of time, basically. So there have been a lot of these novel examples of how to create legal frameworks, and there are many different ways in which this has been done to grant nature rights in the same way that we grant human rights through our different legal frameworks. Now, when it comes to design, I don't know that there are a lot of designers who are actually looking at, at the laws, around granting, around natural rights or rights of nature. But for sure, and hopefully with some of the examples that I showed, we can see that there are designers who are very proactively changing the way they practice to not only work with nature, but to work for nature. So again, to not just design with nature. Well, we've been designing against nature for the past several hundred years. When we talk about collaborative practices, we're talking about designing with nature, but using nature still, right? Like the examples of designing with animals that I showed. It's still using nature in a fairly extractive way. But the next step now is how to design for nature, because in designing for nature, we're also designing for ourselves, because we need both humans and nature to thrive together. So yes, designers should be designing not just with, but for nature.
And another question is about why should we worry about sustainable and human-centered? Why we should worry about that? Maybe for why? Is anyone response to that? Human-centered. Now it became humanistic-centered, right? That's what.
Do you know the age of the person who asked the question?
Anonymous.
I think this question is very relevant for more so for the younger generation. As David mentioned, we have been taking resources from the Mother Earth or Father Earth or whichever way you want to go. And we have not really paid attention to the regenerative aspect, which David again mentioned, for us to match. It's like going back to our simple, those of you who did the elementary school mathematics problem, they will get a problem saying like, we have a little tank. One tap is, filling water. The other pipe is removing water. So if the water that is being removed is much faster, meaning the bigger pipe, the water that is filling will take 3 hours, whereas in 1 hour, the whole water will go away. Just to give you an example, I don't know how many of you understood when David said the regenerative aspect of 2.3x we need to do, the earth, whatever resources we get. So therefore, it's a simple example of, imagine, if you keep on taking things, it's like, your bank account. If you keep spending on your account, you earn, say, $10,000 a month. If you spend $15,000 a month, maybe it's okay for the first month. You can use your credit card. But second month, third month, you have to earn that money. The same credit system works for the sustainability aspect also. If you take more than what is there, what is needed, then obviously you're going to be in big trouble, because at some point in time, your bank balance will be beyond negative. And that's exactly what we are saying will happen in 2050. Of course, people can blame our older generation because we were selfish in terms of doing, but more so because of we were ignorant. We always believed that the resources are unlimited. Whatever you do, it's keep on going to come back. That is the one that data is telling us it's not the same case. So please pay attention. Therefore, sustainability is very important. It's not a overhyped word that is being used in every aspect of our life, but it is certainly something we all need to pay attention, older people as well as younger people.
Okay, next question is for WDO. So any of you can answer. Yeah. And is urban sustainable development is an important issue for WDO? And what WDO expecting for the future, in this issue?
So I had mentioned that a lot of our focus in WDO, leading from the past to the future, or rather the past to the present to the future, has been focused on urban development. I think that really all of the speakers had mentioned today that the population trend is all moving into urban areas. It's a trend that is not going to stop. This is where people find the most opportunities for their lives. And I think that it is always an objective to try to make these small crowded spaces more livable for human communities. And I think a lot of the work that is being conceptualized into how to make cities greener, how to make cities smarter, this will all play a role into quality of life as we move forward. And I think that design as well has a big role to play when we talk about, where do we go from here? Srini had mentioned what comes next. And the important thing I think is that if we can envision where we want to be, we can definitely build that future. Srini had mentioned something to that effect as well. The important thing is that we should have a vision. WDO does want to play a role in developing that, and I want to just take that point one step further. Those of you who are familiar with the UN SDGs, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, will know that it's a 2030 initiative. So a 2030 initiative is almost like tomorrow. It's going to expire in 7 years. The question is, what comes next? And it's part of what WDO is thinking about today. And we want to utilize our relationship with the United Nations and with the different agencies that we interact with in terms of trying to define what does that mean? What will the next set of UN SDGs look like? You know, because actually when we look at the UN SDGs as they are in its current form, they were created in absence of any design input. They were created, in absence of any design team or design profession actually being involved with that. And if you really look at what the objectives are, they're all great objectives, by the way. You know, they talk about zero poverty, no hunger, and so on and so forth. But none of these are going to be able to be actually reached by the year 2030. You know, so for us, the important thing is, if we think about the future, we should think about design-led solutions, number one, because we do want to focus on human communities. But secondly, it's going to be important to have a roadmap. You know, the roadmap should give some sense in terms of not just an objective, but how will we attempt to reach those objectives? You know, what's the path to try to get there? And I think that that's what's missing from the current set of objectives related to the UN SDGs. And it's something that WDO has a lot of interest in helping to provide some guidance.
Thank you. Yeah, please. Hi.
Because it's epic moment, yeah. So, you know, I want to take the advantage to ask some question, not just for me, for my children, for my students, I think, you know. And I really got lots of insight from you, and I want to frame my questions from the human, the evolution of the human civilization. I mean, that experience we have. And as I, have a chat with David, that, I would like to title that the Neo Enlightenment. The enlightenment is the experience in our human civilization that we adapt the science and the humanity, which, create a new future. So, my question is about the Srini that you said next. Yes, what the next? Okay. And I received a very significant message that beside the technology, for example, the AI, right? AI is very powerful, cognified, instrument for solution. The other side may be the new value or new meaning. So we not create for better future using the new technology, but we have to create a new meaning or new value for human. As you say, that the non-life center, or people say the non-anthropocentrism. Maybe the CY will mention about how to live together with the pet, with the plant, and even with the robot together. We are all the ecology. It's kind of a new value. So my question here that, I have a strong feeling that the role of design changed. And we have a new expectation from design contributed to the better future. It changed. So may I ask a question, maybe very fundamental. Is that a paradigm shift of the design for a new, responsibility in the human civilization? If so, I think the question is, what is next? Maybe from the education, maybe from the definition of the design discipline, their role, their competence. Because in the human civilization, it's not only the design, right? We have technology, we have the philosophy, and we have the, democracy, something. So may I consult you that from the paradigm shift, what the new competence or what the new job we have to, have that. You want to add my question? Okay.
That was really fantastic. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and maybe that's what I've been trying to say for the past hour or two, but not saying it as well as you. Yeah, which is that we absolutely need a paradigm shift in design. You know, as I think others were saying, design is very broad and amorphous. If you ask, 100 people what design is, you'll get 100 different answers. But I think in the past, maybe we could have said, besides, problem solving and all that other stuff, that design was about articulating, spaces, things, and interactions, perhaps. But I would argue that now it needs to be about articulating, to use your words, articulating values and meanings, right? And in that sense, I mean, I think, design is so broad, and we all sort of occupy different, different overlapping realms of this vast thing that's called design, and that has so many worlds within it. But at least in the part of design that I tend to spend most of my time in, I've often sort of said as a provocation, especially in art world situations at art events. I say that this is provocative, but then all my friends in the art world say that it's not. But what I'd say is, if we could say that in the past, design was about commodities and selling things, right? Which it kind of was. You would design a better vacuum cleaner that more American housewives, in the post World War II American suburbia would want to buy, whereas art was about ideas. In some ways, you could say that that's totally flipped now, whereby art has in fact become the commodity, and design now is more about ideas and rethinking, re-articulating values and meanings.
I want to give an example in history, right? In the past, if you're doing your master's in, say, chemistry, you're only studying chemistry. But in the last 20 years, I mean, you struggle to do the algorithms and everything else. But in the last 20 years, if your major is chemistry, you're also forced to take computer science, because you're also forced to take the help of a computer-aided programs that is targeted towards your main goal of becoming the best chemist, chemistry-related PhD or thesis. In the same way, already the designers are asked, sometimes unduly, to play multiple roles. So today the designer is not the same. I'm an industrial designer, but if I were an industrial designer 30 years ago, I would have been a different kind of industrial designer. But today, the designers are asked to perform the role of a scientist that they are not, the architects they are not, and the doctors they are not. So if you are designing a medical device, you need to know what your instrument. That means you need to learn the technology, you need to learn the medicine, and you need to see how to treat that human being who doesn't know any of these things that are behind the scene. So in that sense, designers are already multidisciplined and multifaceted. This will change to the non-designers as we go forward. Today, most of the people are designers because they are using ChatGPT or Midjourney to create some new things. They're giving vent to their thoughts. So the other side will also learn how to design or how to co-create. Sorry. So that is what I feel will evolve in the near term. David?
Hello. I agree. Thank you for that question. You said two very important words. You said evolution, and you said my children. We don't create paradigm shifts. Paradigm shifts evolve. The future is coming. The young people are sitting here in front of us. They know what they need to do. You're so correct. We were taught to design products for sales. I teach today. I couldn't teach that to a student today. They wouldn't listen. They'd get up and walk out of the room. We were taught design. Today, we listen to what design is.
I use a more of a model of adult education. I don't pretend to walk into a classroom and to teach anymore. I walk into a classroom to say, what do you want to know? And how can my experience help you get there faster? So the young people, they will be the paradigm shift based on the kinds of things you're talking about, the cultural shifts, the technological shifts. The other point I want to make, which I think is really important, I spoke before about the expertise of the designer, the dreamer. Not to suggest for a minute that we have any special position in our society. The mathematician has the important role, the bureaucrat has the important role, the financier has an important role. It's only our roles together that makes things better. It's just that that's the role we bring best. I would go so far as to say, if you don't mind, that design thinking is not for designers. Designers just think. They don't design think, they think. Design thinking came from the idea that people saw the power of design, and designers are at the boardroom table now. All the major companies have designers at the boardroom because they saw the power of design and they said, how do these guys do this? And they're studying design thinking. And design thinking is for business people. Design thinking is for economists, because now all we're doing is expanding the vocabulary. We're sharing the conversation better, but we're still the designer. But now we have a broader conversation, which is great. The other example I can give you, when I was young, if I had a heart attack in a public place or in a mall, a shopping mall, I probably likely would have died before the paramedic got there. But today we have the automatic defibrillators, right? And we're all taught that where they are, where's the fire extinguisher? I have a heart attack, suddenly somebody's there, and now there's a better chance I'm going to survive. That's design thinking. When it's time for heart surgery, I want the heart surgeon. I don't want the person in the shopping mall doing surgery on me and taking my heart out. I want the heart surgeon. So I'm glad for design thinking. I'm glad that we have a broader conversation, but we still have an expert role to fulfill. And one of the main things, as you said, is to listen to young people, to think of our children. And it is an evolutionary process, which we're very lucky to have, because we can, as you said, not panic so much, knowing that it's naturally going to happen. It's naturally going to be better. And I really like the idea of the cultural institution being one of the leading players in this conversation.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, I just wanted to also take that opportunity. Thomas said that you said two important words. Actually, you said three important words. The third one was civilization. And really when you talk about, design's role in civilization, people are always talking about a doomsday scenario when they talk about AI. Is AI the end of innovation, or is it something else? And of course there's a lot of different dialogue that's happening. But again, I want to kind of come back and point to this whole aspect that technology will come. We need to embrace it, but we need to use it responsibly. And I think that our education, our mission has changed because we're thinking about things that we haven't thought about in the past. Things like design ethics. I don't know of any program at a university that has a hardcore focus on design ethics. And I think that these are things that we have to consider. One of the things that has been part of the global dialogue is whether designers need to have a Hippocratic oath, just like doctors do. So that when we utilize technologies and we apply them into the daily lives of people, we always look to maximize the user benefit, and make sure that we use technology for good. Because, as much as technology can provide great benefits, the propensity to use them for misuse, for example, is also very high, right? So I think these are all examples of how the profession is also changing as we move forward.
Okay, let's work together to inspire innovative thinking and collaborative building a sustainable future. Thank you all for your participation. And I look forward to profound exchange and insight at this forum. Thank you. Let's give a big applause to all the speakers.
再一次掌声，谢谢这个舞台上的4位讲者以及我们的主持人，谢谢。我们请我们的贵宾先回座。好，今天我们花了1上午的时间做了很。
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. We have listened to great speeches, and as Thomas said, it's great that so many of you are care about design and want to change the world with design. And this is only the first day of our Taiwan Design Week. I hope that you will avail yourself of such a great opportunity to establish a network and to have more exchanges. But thank you very much. Thank you. And as you can see on both sides, the QR code. Please scan the QR code. Yes, please scan the QR code and fill out the questionnaire. Because this is the first edition of this Taiwan Design Week forum. Please follow us on Facebook or Instagram. And